Aztec Mythology, the epic battle of the five suns, the end of the world prophecy, Chapter 1, the primordial darkness. Before there was a sun to shine upon the mountains, before the rivers flowed with silver light, and before men and beasts walked the earth, there was only darkness. It was a darkness so vast and eternal that even time itself seemed unborn. The heavens were silent, and the earth below was still unformed, lying in shadow, awaiting the spark that would awaken creation. In this endless void, the gods stirred. They were ancient powers, each embodying aspects of existence: wind, fire, rain, night, and stone. Among them were two great rivals: Tezcatlipoca, the smoking mirror, god of night and sorcery, and Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, god of wind and wisdom. Their rivalry was eternal, for each sought to shape the world in his own vision. Yet even in their opposition, they shared a duty to bring forth a sun, for without a sun, the world could not exist. The gods gathered in a sacred place, a site destined to become one of the holiest on earth, Teotihuacan, the city of the gods. Here, they built a great fire at the center of the cosmos. Around it, the gods assembled, their divine faces glowing faintly in the heatless flames of the void. "This world lies empty," spoke Quetzalcoatl, his serpent feathers shimmering faintly even in the absence of light. "We must bring forth a sun, for only then can life take root." Tezcatlipoca's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "A sun must be strong. A sun must be fierce. It must not only give life, but also test it, so that men are not weak, but hardened as obsidian." Other gods gave their counsel. Tlaloc, lord of rain, wished for a sun that would nourish the earth. Chalcutlic, goddess of the waters, desired a sun of kindness and compassion. But the council was restless, for each deity sought to shape the world according to their own nature. The fire in the center of Teotihuacan crackled with unseen power, waiting for the one who would leap into it and be reborn as the first sun. Tezcatlipoca stepped forward. "I will be the first sun," he declared. His eyes glowed with the fire of ambition, and his obsidian mirror gleamed at his chest. "I will burn with strength, and mankind will know my power. They will bow before the jaguar that rules the heavens." A murmur spread through the assembly. Some feared his arrogance, others admired his boldness. Yet none challenged him, for it seemed fitting that the smoking mirror should test his might. The fire roared higher, as though recognizing its chosen one. Tezcatlipoca strode into the flames, and in an instant, the darkness of eternity was broken. A light blazed across the heavens, blinding raw and fierce. The first sun had been born. The jaguar of night had become the star of day. The earth awakened beneath its light. From the dust and the waters rose the first men and women. They walked upright, clothed in simplicity, their hearts beating with new life beneath the warmth of Tezcatlipoca's fire. Mountains rose, rivers carved their courses, and forests spread wide beneath the jaguar sun. Yet the rule of Tezcatlipoca was harsh. His light burned hot, unforgiving. The beasts of the earth prowled under his gaze, sharp of tooth and cruel of spirit. Humanity struggled, for the jaguar sun was a stern master, demanding strength and obedience. Quetzalcoatl watched with unease. He saw the suffering of the people and the pride that swelled in Tezcatlipoca's heart. "This cannot last," he whispered to the wind. "A sun must guide mankind, not devour it." But Tezcatlipoca, enthroned in the sky, roared with laughter. His jaguar form shone among the stars, his claws stretching across the heavens. I am the first and greatest sun, he boasted. None can cast me down. Yet pride is a dangerous flame. In time, Quetzalcoatl gathered his strength. With the power of the winds, he struck at Tezcatlipoca. The heavens became a battlefield, the very first war among the gods. With a final blow, Quetzalcoatl hurled Tezcatlipoca from the sky. The jaguar sun fell, his light extinguished. Darkness swallowed the earth once more, but it was not the silence of before. It was filled with chaos. For in his fall, Tezcatlipoca unleashed fury upon the world. The earth quaked. From the shadows came jaguars vast and terrible. Their fangs, like obsidian knives, they poured across the land, devouring mankind, tearing apart the first race of humans. Screams filled the air as the children of the jaguar sun were destroyed, their bodies scattered across the forests. When the last cry faded, silence returned. The first age was over. The first sun had died. The gods gathered once more at Teotihuacan, their faces grim. The fire at the heart of the cosmos still burned, waiting. Quetzalcoatl stood apart, his victory heavy with sorrow. The world cannot remain in shadow, he said at last. We must give mankind another chance. A new sun must rise. The gods looked to one another. Tezcatlipoca, wounded and bitter, brooded in the darkness, his pride undiminished even in defeat. Yet the cycle had begun. Suns would rise, suns would fall. Each age would be born from sacrifice, and each would end in destruction. Thus ended the first era of the world, the age of the jaguar sun. But the story of the suns had only just begun. Chapter 2. The birth of the second sun, wind sun. When the first age ended in blood and silence, the gods returned to Teotihuacan. The fire at the heart of the cosmos still blazed, hungry for sacrifice. The council of the gods gathered once more, and the memory of Tezcatlipoca's fall weighed heavily on them all. The earth was bare again. The jaguars had devoured the first humans, and the world lay still beneath the eternal night. Without a sun, there was no warmth, no order, no life. The heavens were silent, as though holding their breath, waiting for a new dawn. Among the gods, Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, stood forward. His eyes glimmered with wisdom, and his feathers shimmered faintly in the fire's glow. He had cast Tezcatlipoca down, but he felt no triumph in the memory. Instead, he carried the burden of responsibility. The world cannot remain in darkness, Quetzalcoatl declared. I will become the second sun. I will shine not with cruelty, but with balance. Humanity will be guided by the wind, free to walk their path, unshackled by fear. Some gods murmured their approval. Others cast wary glances toward Tezcatlipoca, who stood brooding in the shadows. His jaguar form flickered like smoke, and his obsidian mirror glowed faintly with resentment. You would claim the sky for yourself, Tezcatlipoca growled. His voice rumbled like thunder across the council. Do you think you are more worthy than I? Quetzalcoatl met his gaze calmly. I do not seek dominion, only balance. Let me bring light once more. The gods turned to the fire. It crackled and roared, as though answering the call. With a steady breath, the fire consumed him, and in the next instant, the heavens blazed with light. The second sun was born. It shone with a softer radiance than the jaguar sun, yet its brilliance filled the world with clarity. The winds stirred, carrying warmth across the barren earth. Once more, life sprouted. Trees burst forth from the soil, rivers flowed, and a new race of humans emerged beneath the light of Quetzalcoatl's sun. These people thrived. The wind carried seeds across the land, spreading abundance. The second age seemed peaceful, guided by the wisdom of the feathered serpent. But Tezcatlipoca's bitterness grew like a storm in the shadows. He could not forgive the humiliation of his fall, nor could he bear to see his rival exalted above him. In his obsidian mirror, he saw visions of vengeance. The feathered serpent shines too brightly, Tezcatlipoca muttered. He believes himself a savior, but I will remind him that all suns must fall. Balance is a lie. Power belongs to those who seize it. With cunning, Tezcatlipoca began to weave his revenge. He summoned storms darker than night and called forth winds of destruction. The very element that Quetzalcoatl embodied, the wind itself, he turned against him. The skies darkened with raging gales. Hurricanes tore across the land, uprooting forests and shattering mountains. Humanity cried out in terror as the winds swept them away, scattering them like leaves in a tempest. Quetzalcoatl fought to calm the storm, but Tezcatlipoca's fury was relentless. The feathered serpent soared through the heavens, his wings beating against the hurricanes, but his light flickered as the chaos grew. At last, the storm consumed the world. The winds did not merely destroy, they transformed. The humans of the Second Age were lifted by the gales, their bodies twisted and reshaped by Tezcatlipoca's curse. Their arms elongated, their tails grew long, and their cries turned into chattering calls. They became monkeys, swinging among the trees that bent beneath the storm's force. The second sun flickered and died. The world fell silent once more. The earth emptied of men, save for the monkeys who mocked from the branches of ruined forests. The gods gathered again at Teotihuacan, their faces grim. Twice the world had been made, and twice it had been destroyed. The fire at the heart of the cosmos still burned, demanding sacrifice, demanding another sun. Quetzalcoatl, weary and sorrowful, stepped back into the council. He bowed his head, accepting his failure. The winds carried life, but they also carried death. The age of the feathered serpent has ended. Tezcatlipoca smirked in the shadows, his vengeance satisfied, though his ambition remained unquenched. Once more, the gods looked to the fire. Who would next step into the flames? Who would bear the burden of becoming the sun? The story of the suns pressed onward, a cycle of sacrifice and destruction, creation and ruin. Thus ended the second age of the world, the age of the wind sun. But the fire at Teotihuacan still roared, waiting for the third. The gods again stood at Teotihuacan. The sacred fire still blazed at the center of the cosmos, unquenched, insistent. The gods gazed into it in silence, each weighed down by the failures of the first two ages. Quetzalcoatl stood apart, feathers dulled with sorrow. Twice the world had been made, and twice it had perished. Yet the earth remained barren, awaiting renewal. At last, Tlaloc, the great god of rain, stepped forward. The people have suffered under the jaguar sun. They were swept away by the cruel winds of the feathered serpent. Let me rule as the third sun. With my reign I will bring abundance. Life will thrive under my light. A murmur of agreement stirred among the gods. Chalcutlic, goddess of the waters, inclined her head with gentle approval. Yes, brother, the people need kindness. Let your sun rise, even Quetzalcoatl. If you believe your waters can sustain them, then let it be so. Tezcatlipoca only laughed, the sound low and sharp, as obsidian scraping stone. Yes, let the rain god take the sky. Let us see how long his mercy lasts. Ignoring the sneer, Tlaloc walked into the sacred fire. It leaped high to receive him, and once more the darkness was shattered. A new radiance spread across the heavens. The third sun was born. Its light was not the fierce blaze of Tezcatlipoca, nor the airy brilliance of Quetzalcoatl, but a steady warmth, golden and nourishing. Clouds gathered in the heavens, carrying gentle rains that fell upon the land. From the soil sprang forests greener than emerald, and fields heavy with maize. Rivers overflowed with fish, and the people of the Third Age flourished. They sang hymns to the rain that blessed their crops, and their children played beneath the falling waters, laughing in the golden light. But Tezcatlipoca's jealousy, like a hidden ember, never died. He gazed upon the thriving world and scowled. Again they prosper, he hissed. He twisted them into storms of fire, storms that even Tlaloc could not command. One evening, as the people gathered to feast and give offerings, the skies darkened, not with rain, but with smoke. Clouds of flame unfurled across the heavens, glowing red like molten stone. A rumble shook the mountains. The people looked upward in terror. Then it began. Fiery rain poured from the sky, not droplets of water, but burning stones that seared the earth. Forests ignited in an instant. Rivers boiled, their fish leaping in vain as the waters turned to steam. Villages crumbled beneath showers of fire. The people cried out to Tlaloc, "Save us. You are the Lord of Rain, quench this fire." But Tlaloc, though mighty, was powerless against the flames born of Tezcatlipoca's malice. He wept, his tears falling as useless rain upon the inferno. The humans of the Third Age ran, but there was no escape. The fiery rain consumed them, burned their homes, and seared their flesh. But instead, their forms twisted, their bodies lightened, and wings sprouted from their shoulders. They became birds, rising into the burning air, fleeing from the inferno that devoured the earth. Their cries echoed across the skies as the world below was reduced to ash. Silence fell once more, though the ground still smoldered with embers. The age of fire had ended. 3 times the world had been created. 3 times it had been destroyed. Quetzalcoatl lowered his head. The people cannot endure if destruction follows them in every age. We gave them rain, and they flourished. Yet jealousy brought fire and ruin. Will no sun endure? Tezcatlipoca said nothing. His laughter lingered faintly in the smoke, though his expression betrayed neither guilt nor pity. The sacred fire burned on, demanding yet another sacrifice. The cycle of suns was not yet complete. The gods knew the world must rise again. Chapter 4. The Reign of the Water Goddess. The 4th sun. The ashes of the Third Age still smoked upon the earth. Birds filled the skies, their wings carrying them away from the ruins below. But the land itself lay desolate. Forests had burned, rivers had dried to cracked stone, and the voices of mankind were silenced. Yet at Teotihuacan, the fire still burned. Creation was not finished. The world would not remain in silence. The gods gathered once more, grim with the weight of their failures. Tezcatlipoca leaned lazily on his obsidian mirror, his jaguar eyes glinting with cruel amusement. Quetzalcoatl stood apart, his wings drooping, still mourning the loss of the people he had hoped to guide. Then Chalcutlic, goddess of lakes and rivers, wife of Tlaloc, stepped forward. Her garments shimmered with turquoise and jade, her hair flowing like a river's current. Her voice was soft, yet it carried with the force of waterfalls. 3 ages have passed, and in each the people were destroyed. Water nourishes. Let me rule as the fourth sun. Let me bring compassion to the world. The council stirred. Many among the gods, weary of blood and ruin, nodded eagerly. Quetzalcoatl raised his gaze, feathers catching the glow of the fire. Your waters bring life, Chalcutlic. Perhaps under your light, the people may find peace at last. Even Tlaloc, though still bowed with grief, lifted his head to look upon her. His eyes gleamed with hope, and he whispered, "Yes, sister, take the heavens. Heal what was broken." But Tezcatlipoca's smile widened, thin and sharp. He said nothing, only watched as Chalcutlic walked into the sacred fire. The flames embraced her, and in a burst of radiance, the fourth sun rose into the sky. Its light was silver and cool, like moonlight woven into day. Lakes gleamed, rivers sparkled, and seas stretched vast and blue beneath her reign. Once more, the earth blossomed. Maize grew tall, nourished by gentle rains. Fish filled the rivers, and the people swam in the lakes with laughter. They offered Chalculic jade beads and shells, casting them into the waters in her honor. For a time, harmony reigned, but beneath her calm surface, shadows stirred. Tezcatlipoca, bitter as ever, whispered into her heart. He spoke of mockery, of betrayal, of gods who doubted her strength. "They do not honor you as they honor the others," he murmured. "They see you as soft, weak, unworthy of the sun's throne." But over time, doubt spread like cracks in stone. She gazed upon the humans and saw their laughter as mockery, their offerings as hollow. Her heart grew heavy, her waters restless. One day, her sorrow could no longer be contained. Her tears fell in torrents from the sky, each drop swelling into rivers that overflowed their banks. The lakes rose, devouring the land. The seas surged forth, swallowing villages whole. The people cried out, begging her to stop, but Chalcalic wept harder, her grief unstoppable. The flood drowned the world. Mountains disappeared beneath waves. Forests vanished under the rising tide. Humanity, gasping for air, was carried away by the floodwaters. Their bodies shrank, their voices croaked, their skins grew slick. They became fish, swimming in the endless seas that now covered the earth. The fourth sun dimmed, its silver light fading beneath the waters, and then it was gone. The world was silent again, except for the endless crash of waves. At Teotihuacan, the gods looked on with sorrow. Quetzalcoatl clenched his fists. Enough. The people cannot endure endless ruin. How many times must the world die? Tlaloc bowed his head, his tears falling into the sea below. My sister's grief was twisted against her. Even compassion can be broken. Tezcatlipoca only chuckled, his laughter low and cruel. So will they all. But though 4 sons had died, the sacred fire still raged, hungrier than ever. The cycle was not yet complete. Thus ended the 4th age of the world, the age of water. And still the gods knew. The fire demanded another sacrifice. Chapter 5. The 5th Sun. Birth of the present world. 4 times the world had lived. 4 times it had been broken. Each age had risen in hope and ended in ruin, devoured by jaguars, torn away by winds, scorched by fire, drowned in floods. At Teotihuacan, the gods gathered once more. The sacred fire blazed higher than ever, its flames twisting into the sky as if impatient. It demanded sacrifice. It demanded a son. But now the gods hesitated. Too much had been lost. Too many had failed. The jaguar sun, the wind sun, the fire sun, the water sun, all had perished. None among the gods wanted to step forward to risk the fate of their predecessors. The silence grew heavy. Even Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca, who had clashed in rivalry, stood apart, their gazes lowered. Then, from among the assembly, a humble figure stepped forward. Nanahuatzin, the poor and sickly god. His body was covered in sores, his clothing ragged. He was mocked by many of the other gods, dismissed as weak and unworthy. Yet now, in the council's silence, he raised his voice with trembling courage. "I will go," Nanahuatzin said. "I will cast myself into the fire. Let me be the sun." The gods stirred in disbelief. Could this wretched, diseased being take the throne of the heavens? Murmurs rippled through the council. Beside him, another god stepped forward, Tezcatlipoca, proud and richly adorned. His body gleamed with feathers, gold, and jade. His voice rang with confidence. "I too will go," he declared. "I am strong, beautiful, and worthy. Let me be the sun instead." The gods agreed to a trial. Both would prepare themselves for sacrifice. Both would face the fire. One would rise as the fifth sun. For 4 nights they fasted, purifying themselves. They performed penance, Tezcatlipoca, with rich offerings of jade, turquoise, and precious feathers. Nanahuatzin, with humble gifts, his own blood, his own scabs, and the thorns he pressed into his flesh. When the night of sacrifice came, the fire roared, brighter than ever. He raised his jeweled arms and approached the flames. But when he felt their heat, he recoiled. He tried again, but the fire blazed higher, and again he faltered. 4 times he approached, and 4 times he stepped back, trembling with fear. Then Nanahuatzin rose. His sores bled, his body frail, but his heart did not waver. Without hesitation, he closed his eyes, whispered a prayer, and hurled himself into the fire. The flames devoured him in an instant. The heavens blazed with sudden brilliance. A radiant light filled the void. Nanahuatzin, the humble god, had become the sun. Desperate not to be outdone, he cast himself into the flames after Nanahuatzin. And lo, another sun rose into the sky, equally bright, equally fierce. The gods gasped. 2 suns burned in the heavens, their combined light scorching the earth. The balance was broken. "This cannot be," the gods cried. 2 suns cannot rule. In fury, Tezcatlipoca lifted his great jaguar claw. He struck Tezcatlipoca across the face, hurling him from the heavens. The proud god's brilliance dimmed, his light fading until he became the pale silver moon. The scar of Tezcatlipoca's blow still marks his face to this day, seen as the dark patches upon the moon's surface. Only Nanahuatzin remained, his humble light blazing as the 5th sun. But even then, the new sun did not move. He stood still in the heavens, blazing but unmoving, frozen in place. The world lay silent beneath his light. Quetzalcoatl, wise and sorrowful, understood what was required. He turned to the gathered gods. The sun cannot move without sacrifice. He must be fed with blood and with hearts. If the world is to live, we must give ourselves. The gods knew the truth of his words, though dread filled their hearts. Yet one by one, they agreed. They would offer themselves so the 5th sun might move across the sky. In solemn silence, the gods leaped into the flames. Their blood poured into the fire, their hearts fueling its blaze. The sacred energy of their sacrifice surged into the heavens, and the sun began to move. It rose in the east, blazing across the sky, and descended in the west. The cycle of day and night began. The world lived again. This was the fifth age, the world in which mankind still dwells. But the gods' sacrifice came with a price. The sun must forever be nourished. Its light depends upon the offering of blood and hearts. Without sacrifice, the sun would falter and the world would end. Thus, the Aztecs believed that every beating heart, every drop of blood offered upon their altars was fuel for the sun itself. Without it, the sky would darken and the cycle of destruction would claim the earth once more. So began the age of the fifth sun, the age of humanity, the age of sacrifice, the age of fragile light held aloft by endless devotion. The gods had given the world one last chance, and mankind was tasked to keep it alive. Chapter 6: The Burden of Sacrifice. Why the sun demands blood. The fifth sun blazed in the heavens, its light born of Nanawatson's courage and the blood of the gods. But though it rose and set, crossing the sky in radiant cycles, the gods knew a terrible truth. Its fire was not eternal. Unlike the suns of ages past, the fifth sun carried a fragile balance. It moved only because it was fed. Its flames, though bright, were hungry. Its journey across the heavens required nourishment, the very essence of life. The gods had given their own blood, their own hearts, to set it in motion, but their sacrifice could not sustain it forever. The sun would falter, the world would wither, unless humanity, the children of this age, took on the burden. Thus, Quetzalcoatl rose before the assembly and spoke. The sun shines for mankind, but mankind must in turn give back. Life is not free. The fire at Teotihuacan still burns, and it must be fed. As we gave our hearts, so too must the people give theirs. Their blood is the covenant. Their sacrifice is the price of the fifth age. The other gods murmured in agreement, though sorrow weighed their words. Even Chalkiyutlik, still haunted by the flood she had unleashed, nodded with solemn understanding. Without sacrifice, she whispered, the sun will wither and die. The sky will darken. The earth will fall into silence again. Thus it was decreed. Mankind must feed the sun, the sacred debt. From that moment, the Aztecs believed themselves born into a contract with the divine. The gods had poured their essence into the creation of the world. In return, humanity owed them blood, the very force of life. Blood was not merely fluid, it was sacred fire, the breath of the gods flowing through veins. A beating heart was a miniature sun, echoing the Great One in the sky. To offer it upon the altar was not death, it was repayment, renewal, the continuation of the cosmic cycle. Each drop spilled upon temple stones was food for the heavens. Each heart torn from a chest was fuel for the sun's journey. The Aztecs called this Nextlahuali debt payment. They did not see sacrifice as cruelty, but as duty. Without it, the fifth sun would stall, and the world would plunge into darkness as the previous ages had before. The gods of sacrifice. Among the gods, several watched over this sacred exchange. Huitzilopochtli, god of the sun and war, rose as the guardian of the fifth age. He demanded offerings from his people, for he himself battled each day against the forces of night. Every sunrise was his victory, every sunset his retreat, and blood was the strength that armed him for the struggle. Tlaloc, though god of rain, accepted the lives of children as offerings, their tears echoing the raindrops that fed the earth. Even Tezcatlipoca, ever shadowed and cunning, reveled in the sacrifice, for he saw in it the truth he had always whispered, that all life is born of blood and ends in blood. Thus, sacrifice was not a single ritual, but the very heartbeat of the cosmos. The people's burden. In the valley of Anahuac, beneath the temples that reached toward the heavens, the people of the Aztec world understood their place in the cycle. War was no longer only conquest. It was flower war battles, fought not merely to kill, but to capture victims for sacrifice. Warriors became sacred hunters, tasked with feeding the sun. The marketplaces buzzed with trade, yet above them towered the great pyramids, where priests drew blades of obsidian across skin, lifting hearts still beating to the sky. The cries of the sacrificed rose like prayers, their blood flowing down the steps as rivers of life. To the Aztecs, this was not horror, it was cosmic necessity. Children learned from an early age that their lives were threads woven into the fabric of the sun. Some were raised to believe that to die upon the altar was the greatest honor, the surest way to join the gods in the heavens. The fifth sun demanded much, but in return it gave light, crops, warmth, and survival. Without it, there would be nothing. The fragile sun, yet always there lingered fear. The Aztecs knew that their sun, unlike those of ages past, was fragile. They believed it could end at any moment. The ground might quake, the heavens might darken, the fire might die. Thus their sacrifices grew greater, their altars more stained with blood, their festivals more elaborate. The more they gave, the longer they believed the world would endure. Every sunrise was uncertain. Every sunset was a reminder. The sun might not rise again unless it was fed. This fear shaped their civilization, their wars, their temples, their very identity. The burden of sacrifice was the burden of survival. So it was that the fifth sun blazed above the world, radiant yet fragile, its fire fueled by the blood of gods and men alike. Humanity bore the sacred debt, and every day was both a gift and a warning. The gods had created the world anew, but they had also ensured that its fate rested in the hands of mankind. Thus the Aztecs lived, worshipped, fought, and died beneath the burning eye of the fifth sun, knowing that as long as they fed it, the world would endure. But if they failed, the cycle of destruction would return once more. Chapter 7. Huitzilopochtli. The sun warrior god, the fifth sun, burned bright in the heavens, but its light was never secure. Each dawn was a promise renewed, each dusk a battle deferred. For the sun was not simply a glowing orbit, was Huitzilopochtli, the warrior god, locked in eternal war. Born of fire and sacrifice, Huitzilopochtli was more than a celestial body. He was a champion, armed with the Xuchotl, the serpent of fire, a weapon that blazed with divine flame. His armor shimmered with turquoise, his face painted with war stripes of blue, his heart filled with the unyielding resolve of a warrior who could never rest. When he rose each morning in the east, it was not a gentle awakening. It was the beginning of a battle. For waiting beyond the horizon were the forces of night, the Tizitsumum, monstrous star demons, skeletal and crowned with claws, who sought to tear him down and plunge the world into darkness. Every day Huitzilopochtli fought, the dawn of battle. At sunrise, the heavens split with fire. The Xuchotl blazed, striking out at the demons of night, scattering them back into the shadows. With each step across the sky, Huitzilopochtli's radiant shield beat back the darkness, holding chaos at bay. The earth below trembled with his struggle. The winds carried the echo of his war cries, and the rivers shimmered with the light of his serpent weapon. The people of the fifth age knew this truth. Each dawn was not guaranteed. Huitzilopochtli rose only because he was strong enough to fight. and only because mankind fed him with their blood. Without sacrifice, his strength would falter. The Shukatel would dim, the Tizitsimum would descend, devouring the world in endless night. The cosmic enemy, the greatest of his enemies, was not the demons of the stars, but the very force of night itself, personified in the goddess Koilzokwi, the moon. Long ago, she had risen against him at his birth, leading the stars in rebellion. But Huitzilopochtli, still a newborn, had slaughtered them with the Shukotel, casting Koilzokwi's shattered body down the mountain. Her fragments became the pale light of the moon, forever chasing him across the sky. Every night, when the moon rose and the stars spread across the heavens, the battle renewed. Koilzokwi and her star demons pursued the sun, seeking vengeance. And every morning, when Huitzilopochtli rose again, it was proof of his victory. But each day's triumph was temporary. The war could never end. The people's duty, the Aztecs, saw themselves as warriors in Huitzilopochtli's army. Every heart they offered, every drop of blood spilled, was a weapon placed in the god's hand. When a warrior was captured in battle and sacrificed, his spirit did not die. He joined the ranks of Huitzilopochtli's celestial army, rising into the heavens to fight beside the sun. For 4 years, these warrior spirits followed the sun across the sky, then became hummingbirds, darting from flower to flower, forever bound to their god. Thus, war itself became sacred. Battles were not fought merely for conquest, but to capture the lifeblood needed to keep the sun strong. Every campaign was a cosmic duty. Every slain or captured enemy was a gift to Huitzilopochtli. The Aztec warriors painted their faces, sharpened their obsidian blades, and marched beneath banners of the sun, knowing that each stroke of their weapons echoed the eternal struggle in the sky. The fragile triumph, yet for all his victories, Huitzilopochtli's triumph was never assured. The Tizitsimum were patient. The moon never ceased her pursuit. The gods themselves knew that the fifth sun, unlike the suns of ages past, was destined to end. One day, the demons of night would win. One day, Huitzilopochtli would falter. The heavens would go dark, and the world would fall into ruin. But until that day, the struggle continued. Each sunrise was proof of sacrifice. Each sunset was a warning. The world lived only because Huitzilopochtli fought without rest, and because mankind fed his strength. The eternal warrior, so the Aztecs prayed, fought, and bled beneath the burning sky. They carved the image of their god upon stone, painted his face upon shields, and raised pyramids so high they touched the heavens. Atop those altars, they placed human hearts into the hands of their priests, who lifted them toward the blazing sun. And far above, Huitzilopochtli grasped those offerings, drawing their power into his Shukotl, striking again at the darkness. The people looked to the sky and saw not only light, but war. The sun was their warrior. The sun was their protector. The sun was their debt. Thus the fifth sun endured, blazing across the heavens, as Huitzilopochtli fought his endless battle. And so long as the people remembered their duty, so long as the altars flowed red, the warrior god would rise again, bringing light to the world. Chapter 8: The Titsimum, star demons of the night. When the sun fell and the sky grew dark, the world trembled in silence, for behind the scattered brilliance of the stars lurked the Titsimum, the devourers of worlds, the skeletal demons of the night. They were not merely spirits of the heavens, they were ancient, hungry forces born from the void, waiting for the day when Huitzilopochtli would stumble, when the sun would fail to rise, when darkness would reign forever. Their shapes were terrible, gaunt skeletons wrapped in serpents, hollow eyes burning with starlight, claws sharper than obsidian blades. Some were crowned with skulls, others cloaked in black smoke, their bones rattling like death drums across the firmament. To gaze upon them was to see the end of all things. The threat of midnight every night, as the sun sank into the western horizon, the Titsimum stirred. They reached with their claws toward the earth, testing the strength of the heavens. Like spiders at the edges of their web, they waited for the strands of light to snap. For the Aztecs, dusk was not peace, it was fear. The night sky was not beauty, was danger. The stars were not pinpoints of hope, but the eyes of demons watching from the abyss. If the sun failed even once, if no blood fed its fire, the Titsimum would fall from the heavens like burning meteors, their skeletal wings blotting out the firmament. They would descend upon the cities of men, devouring children, tearing women apart, feasting on warriors as the temples crumbled beneath their claws. The world would be ash and bone, the heavens an empty void. Children of the moon, their leader, was none other than Coyolxauhqui, the goddess of the moon, sister of Huitzilopochtli. Shattered at his birth, her body had been cast from the mountain, yet her spirit endured. Her fragments became the moon, pale and scarred, forever leading the demons of night against the sun. She was their queen, crowned in silver darkness, her face painted with blood, her body wrapped in serpents. Each month, when the moon grew fat, the Aztecs feared her most, for her power waxed with her light. She rallied the Titsimum with the promise of vengeance, to devour the god who had slain her, and to extinguish the world he guarded. The stars were her army. Each glittering point in the sky was a soldier of darkness, a spear poised against the sun. The cosmic war at midnight, when shadows thickened and silence grew heavy. The Titsimum pressed hardest against the veil of the world. The people believed that during eclipses, when the sun or moon was swallowed, the demons came closest to victory. In those moments, terror consumed the cities. Priests raised obsidian knives, cutting open chests, lifting hearts still beating to the heavens. Women wailed, warriors stood ready. For if the sun did not return, the Titsimum would fall. But Huitzilopochtli never failed. Each dawn, he split the horizon with fire, scattering the skeletal demons back into the abyss. Yet their defeat was never final. Each night they returned, hungrier than before. The eternal hunger, unlike men or gods, the Titsimum did not age, they did not die. They had no need of temples or offerings. They were hunger itself, sharpened into form. They longed not for conquest, but for annihilation. They sought not to rule the earth, but to unmake it. To them, creation was an insult, life a mockery. Their whispers crept into dreams, their shadows lengthened in corners. Even in daylight, they lingered at the edges of thought, promising that the end would come. One day, the fifth sun would falter, and on that day, they would feast. Fear and worship. The Aztecs feared the Titsimum, yet they also respected them. Some saw them as divine executioners, destined to punish mankind when the gods' patience ran dry. Midwives prayed to them in childbirth, for the act of bringing life was itself a battle against death. And the Titsimum stood at the threshold. Warriors invoked them in secret, hoping to borrow their merciless strength. But in the hearts of most, they were terror. Mothers warned their children not to wander beneath the stars at night, lest the skeletal claws of the Tizitsimum snatch them away. The coming end, the priests knew the prophecy. The fifth son, like the four that came before, would not last forever. One day, the sacrifices would falter, the altars would fall silent, and the blood that sustained Huitzilopochtli would run dry. And then the sky would open. The Tizitsimum would descend, an army of skeletal fire, their laughter echoing like broken flutes, their claws tearing open the firmament. The moon would reign in silence, the stars would burn with hunger, the earth would crumble into nothing. Until then, they lingered, watching, waiting, patient as stone, eternal as night. Chapter 9, The Fifth Son, the Age of Sacrifice. The sky had seen 4 suns rise and fall. Each had shone in its own age, each had burned with its own glory, and each had perished in ruin. The people of the earth lived through storms, through fire, through jaguars and floods, until only silence remained. Then came the gods to Teotihuacan, the city of the gods, to create a new sun. They gathered before the sacred fire, each knowing the truth. A son could not be born without sacrifice. Light must be paid for with blood. It was then that destiny took shape. The birth of the fifth son the gods chose 2 among them. The first was Tecusatecatl, a proud, wealthy deity, clothed in jewels and feathers, whose vanity gleamed brighter than his courage. The second was Nanahuatzin, humble and diseased, his body covered in sores, his spirit quiet as the earth. The fire burned at the heart of Teotihuacan. Whoever casts themselves into it would be transformed into the new sun, the bringer of light for the next age. Tecusatl stood before the flames, but when the heat seared his skin, his pride faltered. 4 times he tried. 4 times he turned away. His jewels clattered to the ground, worthless before the roaring fire. Then Nanahuatzin stepped forward. He carried no riches, no finery, only courage. With no hesitation, he leaped into the flames. His body was consumed, and from his ashes rose the blazing orb of the fifth son. Shamed, Tecusatecatl followed at last, hurling himself into the fire. But when he emerged, he was only the pale reflection of Nanahuatzin's glory, the moon, forever dim beside the sun. Thus the sky was reborn, the still sun, yet when the new sun appeared in the heavens, it did not move. It blazed with brilliance, but hung motionless above the world, frozen in the sky. The gods stared in dread. What use is a sun that does not journey? They asked. What use is light that does not chase the darkness? The answer came with a chill. The sun would move only if it was fed. It hungered, not for jewels, nor for gold, but for blood. The first sacrifice, the gods themselves answered this demand. One by one, they offered their own hearts, cutting open their chests, placing their essence upon the altar. Their blood rose in rivers of fire, and the sun stirred. With each divine heart consumed, the fifth sun began its path across the sky. Day was born, night retreated, and the earth once again was alive. But the gods knew a terrible truth. Their sacrifice alone would not suffice. If mankind wished to live beneath the sun, mankind must also feed it. Thus was born the age of sacrifice, the debt of mankind. The Aztecs believed themselves chosen, bound by sacred duty. They were not merely children of the sun, they were its warriors, its servants, its sustenance. Every beating heart lifted upon the altar was a covenant renewed. Every drop of blood spilled was an offering to keep the heavens from collapsing. To wage war was not conquest, but necessity. To capture prisoners was not cruelty, but duty. The battles they fought were called exyoiatl, flower wars, for their true purpose was not land nor riches, but life itself. Warriors knew that their blades harvested not enemies, but sacrifices. Their captives became flowers offered to the blazing sun. Without them, the fifth sun would falter, and the Tzitzit would descend. The fragile light, unlike the suns of the ages past, the fifth sun was never eternal. Its birth was fragile, its journey conditional. It burned not because it was destined, but because it was nourished. Every dawn was a victory bought with blood. Every sunset was a warning of what would come if mankind faltered. The people prayed atop towering pyramids, their chants rising like smoke. Priests cut open hearts and lifted them to the heavens, red offerings to keep the fire alive. The drums thundered with each sacrifice, echoing the beat of the gods' eternal war. And above, Huitzilopochtli carried the sun on his back, his serpent weapon blazing, his war never ending. The weight of prophecy, yet all knew the fifth sun would one day end, as the four before it had ended. The Aztecs did not see themselves as eternal, but as participants in a tragic cycle. The light above their heads was temporary, a fragile flame guarded only by their devotion. Their lives were not their own, but fuel for the sun, payment for existence. This was their glory, this was their burden. They lived not in defiance of death, but in service to it, knowing that only through sacrifice could life continue, even for a little while longer. The sun marches on, and so the fifth sun rose each morning, brilliant and merciless, carried across the heavens by the strength of warriors and the blood of the fallen. The Aztecs lifted their eyes to the sky and saw not only warmth and light, but duty and death. Their world endured, suspended above the abyss, because they fed the fire with their very lives. Thus the age of sacrifice began, an age where every dawn was a triumph, every life a coin, and every beating heart the price of light. And so long as the altars ran red, the fifth sun would march across the heavens, burning with borrowed fire. Chapter 10: The Blood of Kings and Warriors in the Shadow of the Great Temples, where obsidian blades gleamed and drums thundered like the heartbeat of the gods. The Aztecs forged their destiny in blood. They were not a people who sought comfort, nor a people who feared death. They were the chosen warriors of the sun, bound by an eternal covenant to feed the heavens with their lives. For the fifth sun burned only so long as men were willing to die, and so kings and warriors alike bled upon the altars, their sacrifice echoing across the heavens. The warrior's duty to the Aztec warrior: battle was not conquest, it was devotion. To capture an enemy alive was greater than to slay him outright, for a living captive was an offering for the sun. When a warrior took a prisoner, he did not think of land or wealth. He thought of the god above, Huitzilopochtli, who carried the sun in his arms across the sky. He thought of the eternal war in the heavens, where demons sought to devour the world. And he knew each prisoner was a gift to strengthen the god's hand. Thus was born the exyoiatl, the flower war, battles fought for captives rather than territory. These were sacred wars, staged between rival city-states, where warriors measured their courage not in death delivered, but in life captured for the altars. Every flower war was a harvest, and the flowers were human hearts. The blood of kings, yet it was not only common warriors who bled for the sun. The Tlatoani, the Aztec king, stood as the earthly reflection of divine order. His blood was sacred, his veins rivers of power, his body the bridge between man and God. At coronation, a new king was expected to lead campaigns of conquest, to bring captives for sacrifice. Only by offering blood to the sun could he legitimize his reign. Without war, his crown was hollow. Without captives, his throne was fragile. In times of great peril, famine, eclipse, droughts, the king himself would bleed. Priests pierced his flesh with obsidian, drawing streams of blood that fell upon paper and burned as offerings to the heavens. For the king was not above sacrifice, he was its exemplar. His life belonged not to himself, but to the sun. The immortal warriors, those who fell in battle, or who gave their hearts upon the altar, were not lost. The Aztecs believed their souls were transformed into companions of the sun. For 4 years, their spirits soared beside Huitzilopochtli, following him across the sky, defending him in his eternal war against the demons of night. They became warriors of flame, their laughter carried on thunder, their weapons forged of lightning. When their service was done, they returned to the earth as hummingbirds, small yet brilliant, sipping nectar from flowers, the very essence of renewal. Thus, the warrior's death was never an end. It was a passage into immortality, a transformation into light itself, the sacred sacrifice. Upon the high steps of the Templo Mayor, the heart of Tenochtitlan, the sacrifices were performed. Captives were led in procession, adorned in feathers and paint, their faces calm or defiant, knowing they were to become part of eternity. At the summit, priests raised obsidian knives sharper than steel. With a single stroke, the chest was opened, and the heart, still beating, lifted toward the blazing sun. Blood ran down the temple steps, red rivers feeding the stone, red rivers feeding the sky. The people below did not weep. They raised their voices in song. For this was not death, it was victory. It was proof that the sun would rise again. The sacrifice of one preserved the lives of all. The king's war, the Aztec king led his people in this sacred duty. Each campaign was both political conquest and cosmic necessity. Every city subdued, every tribute demanded, every captive taken was fuel for the heavens. When the king marched, he marched as Huitzilopochtli's chosen general. His warriors carried banners emblazoned with the sun, jaguar pelts and eagle feathers, their weapons obsidian-edged and shining like black glass. Each victory brought not only wealth, but life itself. Each defeat threatened not only the empire, but the cosmos. The fate of the world hung upon the obsidian blades of warriors and the blood of kings, the eternal debt. The Aztecs knew their existence was fragile, bought with sacrifice. They did not dream of peace, for peace meant stillness, and stillness meant death. The sun could not pause, could not falter, could not survive without blood. Every warrior was a debtor to the sun. Every king was a debtor to the gods. To fight was to pay that debt. To bleed was to honor it. To die was to fulfill it. Thus, the empire was not merely a nation, it was a battlefield, a covenant, a ceaseless offering to the burning sky. The glory of blood in their hearts, the Aztecs carried no shame. They saw in blood not horror, but beauty. They saw in sacrifice not cruelty, but balance. They saw in death not despair, but immortality. For so long as kings offered their blood and warriors their lives, the fifth sun blazed across the heavens. The empire endured, suspended above the abyss, because men chose to die for it. Thus, in the eyes of the Aztecs, every drop of blood spilled was a jewel in the crown of the sun. every sacrifice a stone in the foundation of the cosmos. And in their hymns and drums, they declared a truth as bright as the dawn. The blood of kings and warriors is the lifeblood of the world. Chapter 11. The Great Temples and Ceremonies at the heart of Tenochtitlan, where the waters of the lake glimmered like mirrors to the heavens. There rose a mountain of stone. It was not carved by nature, but built by men to touch the realm of the gods. This was the Templo Mayor, the great temple, the sacred axis of the world. Its twin stairways climbed high into the sky, each crowned by a shrine, one for Huitzilopochtli, the sun and war god, and one for Tlaloc, the rain and fertility god. Fire and water, war and life, destruction and renewal, the dual forces upon which the world balanced. Here, upon these dizzying steps, the covenant between men and gods was renewed. Here, the fate of the sun was decided with each beating heart. The procession, when the ceremonies began, the city became a theater of the divine. Drums thundered like storm clouds, their rhythm echoing across canals and marketplaces. Conch shells blared with the voices of the deep, summoning the people to witness. Captives, painted in vivid colors, were led through the streets. Some wore feathers and jewels, dressed as gods themselves, for in death they would join the heavens. Others were adorned in flowers, their faces solemn, their steps steady, as though walking into destiny. The people lined the causeways and plazas. Children clutched their mothers. Warriors stood proud, their eyes reflecting the fire of the altars. For all knew this was not cruelty, was survival. The ascent, step by step, the captives climbed the towering stairs of the Templo Mayor. Each stride brought them closer to eternity. The priests, clad in black robes of obsidian feathers, waited at the summit, their knives gleaming in the sun. The ascent itself was sacred. As the captives climbed, they reenacted the journey of the sun from horizon to zenith, from mortality to divinity. At the peak, the sky stretched wide above them. The city lay below, a sea of faces, banners, and flame. The air trembled with chanting. The earth itself seemed to hold its breath. The offering upon the stone altar, a captive was laid. The priest raised his knife of volcanic glass, sharper than any blade of metal. With one swift motion, he cut open the chest, reaching into the well of life. A heart was lifted high, still beating, blood streaming down the priest's arms. He held it to the blazing sun, and the people roared as the offering was given. The drums beat faster, the chants grew louder. Blood flowed down the steps of the temple in crimson rivers, glistening in the daylight, marking the stairway as a ladder between heaven and earth. One by one, the captives followed. One by one, their hearts became stars in the sun's eternal war. The scale of the sacrifice in times of great ceremony, the scale was beyond imagining. When the great temple was dedicated in 1487 under Ahitsadal, thousands of captives were sacrificed over 4 days and nights. The stairways ran slick with blood, the smoke of burning hearts curled into the heavens, and the lake waters reflected red. The city echoed with song, with prayer, with the cries of priests calling to the gods. The people danced in the plazas, offerings of maize and flowers scattered among the blood. It was not horror they saw, but triumph. For each heart was a gift, each drop of blood a shield against the end of the world. The living pyramid, the great temple, was more than stone. It was a living monument, its walls absorbing the blood of centuries. Each layer was built upon the last, like rings in a tree, each expansion a renewal of covenant. The Aztecs saw it as the center of the universe, the point where heaven, earth, and the underworld met. To climb its steps was to ascend into the realm of the divine. To offer sacrifice upon its summit was to hold the cosmos in balance. Here, kings proved their right to rule. Here, warriors fulfilled their sacred duty. Here, gods and men met in blood and fire, the spectacle of the gods. As night fell, torches blazed across the temple, painting it in gold and shadow. Dancers clad as jaguars and eagles moved in circles, their movements imitating the cycles of the cosmos. The sound of flutes and rattles filled the air, weaving with the drums in rhythms older than memory. The people saw not death, but a reenactment of creation itself. Each ceremony echoed the birth of the fifth sun, the sacrifice of the gods, the eternal war in the sky. And when dawn came, and the sun rose brilliant once more, they knew their offerings had been accepted. The heart of the empire, the great temple, was not merely a building. It was the axis of the empire, the center of faith, the proof of divine order. To stand before it was to stand at the edge of eternity. To climb it was to step into myth. To sacrifice upon it was to become immortal. And so the ceremonies continued, year after year, blood flowing like rivers, drums thundering like storms, the people chanting to the heavens. For so long as the great temple stood, the sun would rise. For so long as blood ran down its steps, the fifth sun would burn. Chapter 12. The Prophecy of the End. The Fall of the Fifth Sun. From the first day the fifth sun rose above the world. The gods whispered a truth: it would not last forever. No sun had ever endured. Each had burned bright, each had perished, and the heavens had been remade in fire and ruin. The fifth sun was no exception. It was not eternal, it was fragile, born of sacrifice, dependent upon blood. Its light was purchased, not promised. Its journey across the sky was not destiny, but debt, and the debt could not be paid forever. The shadow of prophecy. The priests of Tenochtitlan spoke in hushed voices of the prophecy. They said that one day the altars would fall silent, the drums would cease, the hearts of men would no longer rise to the heavens. On that day, the sun would stagger, its fire would dim, its path across the sky would falter, and when it fell, the titsimimist skeletal demons of the stars would descend in a storm of bone and fire. The signs of the end. The people believed the gods would send omens to warn of the end. Strange lights in the sky, rivers turning red, temples cracking under unseen weight. Some whispered that eclipses were glimpses of that final day, moments when the sun's strength failed and the demons pressed close. Each eclipse sent the city into panic, for all feared it might be the last. Others said the gods themselves would withdraw their favor, weary of the endless sacrifice, tired of the blood. The rain would cease, the maize would wither, and hunger would gnaw the bones of the people. Then, in desperation, the altars would run dry. The last battle, the end, would not come quietly. The prophecy told of a final war when Huitzilopochtli, weary from centuries of struggle, would face the Titsimim in a battle that shook the heavens. Lightning would split the skies. The moon, Coilzocui, would descend with her star demons, her body whole once more, her vengeance blazing. The earth would tremble, mountains splitting open, seas boiling into steam. The warriors of the Sundo's souls, who had once died in sacrifice, would rise again, joining their God in his last stand. For one final dawn, the heavens would be a battlefield of unimaginable fury. But the prophecy promised no victory. The Titsidimum would tear down the sun, devour its fire, and cast the world into eternal night. The silence of the world when the fifth sun fell, the world would end. Darkness would spread like a flood, swallowing cities, mountains, rivers. The stars would not shine as guardians, but as predators, their skeletal forms feasting upon the ruins. The hummingbirds, the souls of warriors, would vanish. The temples would crumble to dust. The lake would dry, leaving only cracked earth. The voices of the people, the songs, the drums, the prayers, all would be silenced. The age of man would close. The eternal cycle. Yet even in despair, the Aztecs believed in renewal. Just as the first 4 suns had fallen and risen anew, so too would a new world be born after the 5th sun's death. From the ashes of the old, a new age would rise. A new sun would burn. A new people would live beneath it, and the cycle would continue, endless as time itself. But for those who lived beneath the 5th sun, this truth brought no comfort, for they knew they were not the heirs of a new dawn. They were the children of twilight, guardians of a dying age, the final prayer. And so, each day, as the sun rose above Tenochtitlan, blazing gold upon the waters of the lake, the people prayed not for immortality, but for one more dawn. Each sacrifice was not an attempt to escape fate, but to delay it. Each heart upon the altar was a defiance, a cry against the inevitable. They knew the 5th sun would fall. They knew their world was doomed. Yet they fought, they bled, they sang, because even a single day of light was worth the price. The fall of the 5th sun, one day, the drums will cease. One day, the altars will stand empty. One day, the sun will falter, and the Titsidimum will descend. The sky will shatter, the earth will burn, the stars will feast, and the 5th sun will fall, just as all suns before it have fallen. But until that day, the warriors fight, the kings bleed, the temples rise, and the people endure. For they know the truth carved into the bones of their destiny. The light of the sun is fleeting, bought with blood and destined to die.